Clinical trials are systemic research studies conducted to assess the effects of new diagnostic methods and treatments on human health outcomes. They require ethical approval and must follow good laboratory practice GLP standards to ensure quality and reliability. Participants of different age groups may be involved, and a range of medical interventions such as medication, surgical techniques, and preventive strategies can be evaluated. Preclinical studies are carried out before human testing to examine toxicity and pharmacological properties using laboratory experiments or animal models. Now moving on to the different phases of clinical studies. Phase 1, new drugs are tested on a small group of volunteers to determine safe dosage levels and detect possible side effects. Phase 2, a larger group of participants is involved to further assess safety and monitor adverse reaction using treatments that have already shown safety in Phase 1. Phase 3, the trials are carried out on a much wider population across different regions to confirm effectiveness and safety, acting as the final step before regulatory approval. Phase 4, are also known as post-marketing surveillance. This phase takes place after a drug has been approved and focus on monitoring and its long-term safety and effectiveness in the general population. For Phase 1 clinical trials, the purpose and objective is that the first stage of testing of drugs in humans after preclinical studies. The main focus is on safety and tolerability, not efficacy, and it evaluates pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and to determine the maximum tolerated dose, the dose-limiting toxicities, recommended Phase 2 doses, and it also may show early signs of activity, especially biologics or targeted designs. And for the study design and participants, it is a small sample size, usually 20 to 100 participants, usually healthy volunteers. Exception includes for toxic drugs such as anti-cancer drugs required for patients, and common designs include single ascending dose SAD, multiple ascending dose MAD, and modern trials include integrated designs SAD, MAD, plus food effect, and strict inclusion/exclusion criteria, and also informed consent is mandatory. For Phase 1 clinical studies, safety assessment and dose determination ensures continuous monitoring of adverse events, vital signs, ECG, and lab tests, and starting based on NOAEL from animal studies, and control dose escalation according to cohort-based progression. Sentinel dosing and stopping rules for toxicity includes the PK parameters. For regulatory and ethical requirements, it requires an approval from the regulatory authority, ethics committee, IRB, and must follow good clinical practice, GCP. Informed consent is mandatory, and ongoing safety monitoring throughout the entire studies. For role of qualified person, it ensures GMP compliance of investigational product, certifies product quality before human use, and reviews for manufacturing and QC data, and ensures proper storage, labeling, traceability, and protects patient safety through the product quality control.
Hello sir, my name is Benjamin. Now I will be presenting about the Phase 2 clinical trials. So after a drug successfully completes Phase 1 trials and demonstrates a acceptable safety profile in healthy volunteers, it moves into Phase 2 clinical trials. So this stage is often considered the first real test of whether the drug actually works in patients who have the disease it is intended to treat. So the main purpose of Phase 2 trials is to: first, researcher wants to determine if the drug produces a therapeutic benefit. Second, they want to identify the most appropriate dose and dosing schedule for the future studies. So Phase 2 trials are commonly divided into two phases, which is Phase 2A and Phase 2B. Phase 2A focuses on dose finding and identifying early signs of effectiveness, while Phase 2B evaluate the drug efficacy more thoroughly in a larger patient population. So therefore, Phase 2 serves as a bridge between early safety testing and also large-scale confirmation study in Phase 3. Unlike Phase 1 study, Phase 2 trials involve patients who actually have the target disease. Typically, around 100 to 300 patients are recruited based on strict inclusion and also exclusion criteria. So, to produce a reliable result, phase 2 trials often use randomized controlled trial design. Participants are usually randomly assigned to receive either the investigational drug or a comparator such as a placebo or an existing treatment. So this randomization will help to reduce the bias and also to improve the reliability of the finding. And another important feature is blinding. In a double blind study, neither the patient nor the investigator knows which treatment is being administered. This minimizes the influence of expectation on the study results. And the effectiveness of the drug is assessed using predefined endpoint. Depending on the disease, these may include symptoms improvement, tumor response rates, biomarker changes, or even improvement in physical function. At the same time, safety remains a major focus. So researchers will closely monitor adverse drug reaction and serious adverse events throughout the study. So the information collected throughout this study will help to determine the balance between benefit and also the risk. If the benefit outweigh the risk, the drug may proceed to the phase 3 development. Besides evaluating efficacy and also safety, phase 2 trial must also comply with strict regulatory and also ethical requirements. So all studies conducted in phase 2 clinical trial must follow good clinical practice or GCP, which provide international standard for protecting participants and also maintaining data quality. So before any trial can begin, approval must be obtained from an ethics committee. In Malaysia, clinical trial must also be registered with the National Medical Research Register or NMRR, and sponsors may need approval from the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency known as NPRA. Another key requirement is informed consent. Participants must be given complete information about the study and also voluntarily agree to participate before any procedure can begin. Finally, I would like to highlight the role of the qualified person or QP. The QP is responsible for ensuring that the investigational medicinal product meets all quality standards before it is used in patient. These include reviewing manufacturing records, certificates of analysis, stability data, and also quality documentation. The QP also reviews updates to the investigational medicinal product dossier and verifies that any manufacturing deviation are properly investigated and resolved. So this quality oversight helps protect patients and also maintain confidence in the clinical trials. In summary, phase 2 clinical trials are critical stage in drug development. They provide the first evidence of therapeutic effectiveness in patients, help determine the optimal dose, continue safety monitoring, and generate the data needed to decide if drug should advance to phase 3 trials or not. At the same time, strict regulatory, ethical, and quality requirements help to safeguard the patient welfare and also data integrity. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Shimajita Aisha, and I'll explain on phase 3 clinical trial. So the purpose of phase 3 is as the final stage of clinical development before a new medicine is submitted for marketing authorization. So the objective is to evaluate the benefit risk profile within a large diverse patient population and providing that info as the primary evidence for drug approval before going to the last evaluation step, which after that the drug can be marketed to the public. And in this phase, they go through a large scale study designs where it is conducted according to ICH good clinical practice, where 100 to 1,000 of participants across multiple hospitals and countries are taken, and they do a randomized participation allocation and a double blind design to reduce bias, and they compare the results against a control standards or a placebo. So moving on to the next step. So primary objective of this clinical phase is to confirm the therapeutic efficacy of the drug by doing a continuous adverse reaction monitoring of the product and detect any uncommon adverse effect and do documentation on it, where it will be reviewed by the Data Safety Monitoring Board, which can recommend any modification, can give temporary suspension or early termination of the study if significant safety concerns arise. So after successful, we go to the regulatory evaluation, where all the clinical data is compiled into the Common Technical Document (CDT) for submission. So in Malaysia, application for product registration are submitted to NPRA, and they will review process include assessment of clinical trial evidence, manufacturing compliance, GMP certification, risk benefit evaluation, product labeling, and pharmacovigilance plans. Last, I'll talk about the responsibility of qualified person (QP). So before any batch is released, they need to ensure compliance with GMP, reviews the manufacturing and quality control records, certifies investigational medicinal products before any clinical use, and during phase 3, they need to ensure product quality and consistency, investigates any manufacturing deviations, and maintain documentation and batch traceability, and also support regulatory inspections and audits. And the importance of QP is they protect participant safety, while also ensure regulatory compliance and maintain integrity of clinical trial data. They also support a successful drug approval. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and good day. My name is Sari and I'll be talking about phase 4 of the clinical trials, and this is basically the last stage of clinical research. And unlike the other previous phases, this takes place after only when the medication or medicine has been approved by regulatory authorities and now is available for public use. So the purpose of this phase is to ensure that medicine continues to be safe and effective throughout any use to all population. So starting off with, I'll be talking about the post-marketing surveillance. So what is post-marketing marketing surveillance? It is the most important activity during phase 4, and it is usually known as PMS. So post-marketing surveillance is the continuous monitoring of medication after they have entered the market. So basically the purpose is to identify safety issues that may not have been detected during earlier clinical trials, and as well as, for example, safety information comes from many sources. So this can include, by, as you can see from the left side of my slides, is that basically like there's reports submitted by doctors or any healthcare workers, patients reporting side effects, hospitals, and as well as like patient registries and additional any clinical studies. So if any new risks are identified, regulatory authorities may update the product label, issue safety warnings, restrict its issues, or even in serious situation withdraw medication from being able to be put into the market. So the whole point of post-marketing surveillance, as already mentioned, is that it ensures the safety and quality to the patients after it has already been out in the market. And if there's any further issues, that they will regulate to the authority rules and implement something, and as well as correct it in a way to prevent any further harm. Okay, so next is the pharmacovigilance in phase 4. So what is pharmacovigilance? So basically, it is another very important component of phase 4, and basically, how is it defined? According to World Health Organization, basically pharmacovigilance is the science and activities related to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or any other medication related problems. So the main point or objective of this is basically to identify or detect adverse drug reactions, identify new safety signals, evaluate the benefit-risk balance of medication, prevent harm to patients, and improve the safe use of medications. So Basically, this aligns with the PMS because it is the evaluation and monitoring part of the process. So basically, what happens is that pharmaceutical companies are required to report serious adverse events to regulatory authorities, while agencies such as FDA and EMA continuously review this information to ensure medicines remain safe throughout their life cycle. Alright, so next, last but not least, of the phase 4 of the clinical trials is basically the critical um, approval, or how the trial works. So there's always a before approval and the after approval and the regulatory approval of this phase. And this phase is usually after it has been regulatory approved during the clinical research. So, but why is it so important and clinical for this final stage is because phase 4 critical clinical trials are extremely important because not every side effect can be discovered before medicine is approved. So, some adverse reactions only appear after it has been approved and put out to the market for the population to use. And this is can be used from variety of the population, from children to adults to elderly to pregnant patients to all these types of patients. So some of these adverse effects can only be shown after its use. So, for example, many years of use, treatment of millions of patients, or use in people with different diseases or medications in order to know more information and more clinical researches. So, the findings from Phase 4 studies help healthcare professionals prescribe medications more safely and allow regulatory agencies to make informed decisions regarding labeling updates, safety warnings, or additional monitoring requirements depending on the research and the information that they need. So ultimately, phase 4 protects public health by ensuring that the benefits of medicine continues to outweigh its risks. So in general, phase 4 clinical trials plays a very vital role in ensuring that the continued safety and effectiveness of medicines after they reach the market. So this can be done through post-marketing surveillance and pharmacovigilance, healthcare professionals, pharmaceutical companies, and regulatory authorities working together in order to identify new safety concerns, monitoring long-term outcomes, and protect patients. So continuous monitoring helps ensure that medicines remain both safe and beneficial throughout the life cycle of use for any towards any patients. And that is all from my part. I'll move it on to the next person.
Hi, my name is Aliato, so I will explain about qualified person and its roles. First thing, we should know who is qualified person. Basically, it is a person who highly trained and legally responsible professional, which they are accountable for certifying that every batch of medicine is properly manufactured, tested, and fully compliant with regulatory standards before it can be released. The first role is they responsible in quality assurance. The QP ensures that strong quality systems are in place. This includes making sure that SOP are followed, safety databases are accurate, audits are conducted, and staff are properly trained to maintain consistent quality and safety. Other than that, QP also plays important role in ensuring compliance with regulatory standards, which they oversee all the reporting and evaluation of adverse events, ensure accurate safety documentation, coordinate with regulatory authorities, and confirm that all submissions are timely and accurate, which they also help in ensure that manufacturing and distribution sites follow GMP, which is good manufacturing practice requirements. Finally, the QP also involved in oversight of documentation, safety monitoring, and manufacturing activities. They need to ensure that safety systems are in place to detect and manage risks and conduct audits of facilities and investigate any product defects that could affect patient safety. They also coordinate between clinical, regulatory, manufacturing, safety teams, and to ensure everything remains compliant and well controlled. Overall, the QP basically act as a key safeguard that can ensure the medicine can remain safe, effective, and compliant from development through the final use. As some conclusion that from this major project, we learned that a drug development need to follow step-by-step clinical trial process, which start with phase one, which is the checks. They check safety and dosage in a small group of healthy volunteers. Next, move on to phase two, which they study patients to see if the drug works and to refine the dosing, and move to the phase 3 to confirm safety and effectiveness in larger populations to support the approval from phase 2, and the last phase is phase 4, to continue after approval to monitor long-term and rare side effects in real-world use. And basically, regulatory standards like GCP and GMP ensure the trials are safe and data is reliable. And qualified person, which is QP, is the person who legally responsible to ensure product quality and patient safety. Basically, QP oversees quality system, safety monitoring, and reporting of the adverse event. QP is important as they confirm each batch is properly manufactured and tested before use and help to prevent multiple unsafe medicine from reaching patients.